Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's podcast. And now we come to today's main content. Today I have shared with you quite a lot about what happiness is as well as the paths that lead to happiness, so that we can have a life worth living. But there is also an important piece of the puzzle that I have not shared with you. Without this piece of the puzzle, it is also very harmful. That is the question of what makes us lose happiness. Because not being able to answer this question is like us always being fond of collecting water in a bucket, but when the bucket leaks, we don't know how to fix it, leading to the problem. No matter how much water we catch, it will all flow out to me. This journey to find the answer is a long journey, and there are many joys and sorrows both in work and in life. After such a long process, I have enough to contemplate and draw conclusions for myself. The learning that I think will be more or less valuable for you and your friends. Especially for young people to help them have more solid equipment in their future journeys. The content I share today will be the foundation I develop for the following episodes. To start, I will take you through this journey from an aspect that at first seems unrelated to the topics we are talking about, from the professional aspect of my work. One of the areas of work I'm in charge of is called UX/UI, which means designing user experiences. For a long time, I held a position called the role of building a basic foundation of user experience from which we can build the company's products and services thanks to the time spent. Working in that position, I had the opportunity to lead a number of teams to carry out quite in-depth research projects on security and user experience. And one of the studies that I am most interested in is a study that I named the expectation threshold. This study is not only an important foundation that has helped me apply it to many professional projects. In my work, I also use it to apply to other aspects of my personal life. The reason is because after many years of contemplation and reflection, I realized that the threshold of expectation is the root that determines happiness or unhappiness in our thinking. So what is the expectation threshold? Instead of giving you dry definitions, let me tell you a rather interesting story. I still remember a time when I and my colleagues organized a live experiment right in the workshop, led by the leaders of the company I was in charge of, in the experiment. At that time, I invited some children to my office, divided them into 3 groups of 5 children each, and in turn I invited each group to the meeting room. If you imagine it as a large meeting room, it has glass around it and on the outside it has a waiting area. And I intentionally set it up like that so that when you wait outside, you can look inside and see the activities going on inside. When I invited the first group into the meeting room, I brought out 5 large boxes of Lego. At that time we intentionally created for the children the feeling that each child would receive a box of Lego like that. When the children saw that box of Lego, their eyes lit up, but until they brought it, the Lego box was towards the children. We opened that Lego box, and in each Lego box there were 2 smaller boxes, and we gave each child a small box of Lego like that, and obviously they were a bit disappointed. Hope a little. After that, we interviewed each child individually and let them mark a scale from happy to disappointed. 10 points were extremely happy and 0 points were extremely disappointed, and the result was that the vast majority of students were satisfied. I choose to move around at the threshold of 3 to 4 points. During the time we did this activity for the first group, because it was a glass room, the children in the other 2 groups basically looked inside and could guess what the situation was like. When it was the second group's turn to enter the room, we gave them the remaining 5 Lego sets and the results of their survey. They scored in a roundabout range of 6 to 8 points, until when the last group came in. We informed them that the Lego boxes were all gone and that each child would be given a bar of chocolate. You can probably guess that they were very disappointed, but when they sat down to open the chocolate to eat, we announced that they were very good children, so I sent someone out to buy 5 more boxes of Lego to give to them. I'm sure you can guess that they were very good. It was fun, and the survey results also reflected the same. Almost all of them thought it was between 9 and 10 points. I still remember one student even drew a heart behind the number 10. Actually, it was just a fun experiment for us to show the leadership team about the importance of setting expectation thresholds. Obviously, during the research process, we do much more in-depth surveys, with the objects being the company's actual customers. But through the above story, we can see very clearly that along with the results we get, but we set up different expectations, the experience is completely different from our first group. Intentionally setting the expectation of receiving a large box of Lego until they only receive a small box, then obviously their feeling will be disappointment. In the second group, the children were given exactly what they expected to receive. Then when it comes to group number 3, their expectations are 0. Then we suddenly give them more than that expectation. Obviously their experience scores will be very good, and when I mentioned earlier that I did this research on the threshold of expectations for my professional work. But if we think more about it, we see that it is true for many other aspects of our lives. It is the foundation to build the knowing enough mindset that I have mentioned many times in this article. Previous episodes. So specifically, what is the expectation threshold? It is when we set for ourselves a milestone, a certain standard, and we consider that milestone to be normal, which is what we will receive by default. Only when faced with reality do we realize that there is a gap compared to our reality. This gap is professionally called the expectation gap, and if this gap is positive, it means if our expectations are higher than the actual level, it will lead to disappointment, and this disappointment will be greater if the margin of difference is greater. Suppose we expect our children to be prodigies and good students at the city level. Then when they only rank 5 in class, it will disappoint us, and it will make us forget the fact is that I am in the top 10 best students in the class. And this is very harmful, because no matter how good the reality is, if our expectations are still higher than reality, we will feel disappointed. Happy. On the contrary, if this difference is negative, meaning the expectation is lower than the reality you are receiving, it will automatically create a feeling of happiness. That is the knowing enough mindset that I often mentioned in previous episodes. Why is it that farmers all day sell their faces to the land and their backs to the sky, but they are always happy and love life? Because their expectations are lower than the actual level they receive? They only need 3 meals a day to eat, and when they receive the reality as expected or a little higher, it also makes them happy. Now that we look at this formula, we see that in the vast majority of cases, the reality of the life we have will be a fixed constant, or it will change if it can change. A very slow way that cannot be done quickly in a day or two. And because reality is a fixed constant, the remaining factor that determines our happiness is expectation. The higher the expectation, the greater the disappointment, and disappointment is the source of loss of happiness. And this fits with many of the lessons that our predecessors left us. Mr. Barry Schwartz, a very famous American psychologist, said that the secret to happiness is to reduce expectations. As for William Shakespeare, he said that expectation is the root of all brokenness in love. There is even another famous saying that expectation is the thing that slowly kills us. Gradually from within. So the next question is, how do we reduce or eliminate this expectation? To do this, we will analyze a little more deeply the expectation that comes from where. And in my opinion, it comes from 3 paths. The first way is that it comes from our past. For example, maybe you were lucky enough to be born into a very happy family. Parents loved each other and never had bad words. From then on, you see it as the normal standards of all families. You don't know that the percentage of families like that is very rare until you have a family. The family knows that disagreements and arguments in the family are an obvious thing, that is the reality, but because you are influenced by your past, your default at the time, this is higher than reality. So when you face reality, you think you're in a bad relationship and you turn away, in some cases regardless of how it affects your future. What your children are like instead of you having your own view. If you research yourself to get a true picture of reality, you will lose the opportunity to have a happy family just because of the influence of the past. That is the first path. The expectation comes from past comparisons. The second path is equally dangerous. It comes from surrounding environmental standards. This is the type of expectation that we easily encounter. In today's daily life, that is when we begin to use the reality of the people around us as the standard for our expectations, and depending on this, the comparison is made. Superior or inferior comparison. Then it will lead to poor happiness or unhappiness. If it is a poor comparison, then automatically you will find yourself unhappy. For example, at the end of the year, you get an extra month's salary while the whole company gets a 3-month bonus. Naturally, you will feel very disappointed, but for the same month's salary, let's say no one in the whole company gets a bonus. If you receive a reward for yourself, you will automatically feel joyful and happy. We see that in both of these cases, they are rewarded with a month's salary, but the feeling is completely different, and in our current society where every day we are bombarded with encouragement for this way of life. The media constantly portrays the rich, beautiful, and famous, not just famous people. When we surf on social networks, we will see a lot of people sharing their stories. The flashy image of a house and a car. These things are pumped into your heads every day and you hear them over and over again. Then gradually you think that these are normal milestones in life. Then you bring that normal benchmark in to make the expectation in your formula and you compare it with the reality you get and it makes you feel like I'm a failure, weak, useless person. From there, it takes away the feeling of happiness that you have with your current life. The second type of expectation is the standards coming from the surrounding, and finally, the most dangerous kind of expectation. That's because it comes from your own imagination. The reason it's dangerous is because our imagination often has no limits. It leaves a very large gap compared to reality. A funny example is the case where some girls often watch love stories or watch Korean romantic movies. In that story they draw very beautiful love stories and the main characters. Very talented, gallant, polite, rich with very eloquent and thrilling love stories. And you bring the director's imagination, you bring it back, you paint one more layer with your own imagination and then you bring that imagination to compare with love. The normal love that I have or will have compared to the lover standing in front of me. Naturally, you will see that your lover is so ungrateful and so ugly and incompetent. Although in reality that lover is not that bad. In fact, you probably already have a very good relationship, but it is because of setting the wrong threshold of expectations that it is the problem. The source that makes you lose your own happiness is not only for girls but also for boys. You often imagine your lover must be a beautiful model like a beauty queen, talented in speech and conduct, and a housewife. Then you are also pushing your expectations into a vague imagination. Those are the three most common paths that create unrealistic expectations. Firstly, from the past you have had. The second, slightly more dangerous thing is from the people around you, and the third is your own imagination. And in these cases, the only way for you to find happiness is for you to adjust your expectations to bring those expectations closer to reality. That is the only way for you to be happy. There is a saying that I really like from a man named Sri Chinmoy. He is a famous Indian Zen scholar. Well, he said peace begins when expectation ends, and that is the main message that I want to share with you all today. Peace only appears when we let go of expectations. Through today's episode, I hope to have helped you better understand the origin of expectations as well as the dangers it affects our lives and happiness if we do not know how to control them. Expectation is like keeping a wild animal next to us. It will eat up all the happiness we find. Conversely, if we understand it clearly and know how to master it, that will be the key for us to find a lot of success. And happiness is in life. Today's episode is an important foundation to help you have a clearer view of expectations. There are still many ideas that I haven't been able to fully explain, such as how to do it. Manage expectations and then use them to motivate us to reach higher goals without letting it affect our current happiness. However, today's episode is already a bit long, so I'll stop here. I will return to this topic in the future. Hopefully what I shared today is more or less useful to you. If you find this content valuable, please share it with your friends and relatives. By the way, due to YouTube's award, they prioritize videos with many likes, so if you like this video, please click on the like button to help more people know more about our podcast. Thank you for your follow-up and wish you a productive day.